All right, council members, apologize for the delay. You can begin.
Good afternoon. I'm Robert White, council member at large and chair of the Committee on Government Operations and Facilities. Today is Wednesday, May 26, 2021, and we are meeting today remotely via the Zoom teleconferencing platform, actually on YouTube this time. The time is now 12:07 p.m. I'm calling to order this joint public hearing of the Committee on Government Operations and Facilities and the Committee on Business and Economic Development. The topic of today's joint hearing is B24-155, the BB French School Disposition Act of 2021. The BB French School in the bill's title refers to a district-owned building at 7th and G Streets Southeast in Ward 6. It was last used as a school nearly 80 years ago, then sat vacant for over a decade. In the 1970s, the district government rented the building out to the Capitol Hill Arts Workshop, or CHAW. After CHAW coordinated extensive renovations on the building, they moved in 1980 and have used it continuously ever since then. The building houses a dance studio, a recital space, a painting studio, a black box theater, an art gallery, a ceramics and pottery studio, a photography darkroom, music instruction studios, and business offices. We will hear from CHAW today regarding the benefits to the community. A few years ago, a long-term lease between CHAW and the district expired. The Department of General Services, or DGS, has negotiated a short-term lease extensions with CHAW from time to time since then, allowing them to continue their services. Under district law, certain long-term leases on district-owned property require council approval. In 2019, our colleague, Ward 6 Councilmember Charles Allen, introduced a bill that would authorize a new lease on the same terms as CHAW's prior lease. Councilmember McDuffie and I chaired a joint hearing like this one, where CHAW leaders explained the lack of a new long-term lease has hampered their ability to secure financing for renovations and other new projects. There was an unusually high degree of consensus from everyone involved that CHAW should remain in the BB French School building and that they needed a new long-term lease. However, DGS advised the council that it needed to negotiate new terms with CHAW before entering into a new long-term lease, and there was concern from the executive about the council initiating the legislation. At the time, the committee anticipated new legislation would be forthcoming expeditiously. The process took longer than anticipated, but now that the administration and CHAW have completed their negotiations, the mayor has sent the council legislation that is before us today. The bill would declare BB French School as surplus and no longer required for public purposes, and authorize the mayor to dispose of the property through a 20-year lease to CHAW. I will now turn it over to my co-chair for this hearing, Councilmember Kenya McDuffie, the Ward 5 council member and chair of the Committee on Business and Economic Development.
Thank you, and good morning to you, Chairman White, as well as those who have joined us today for this hearing. I am Kenya McDuffie. I'm councilman for Ward 5 and chair of the council's Committee on Business and Economic Development. And I'll be co-chairing this hearing on Bill 24-155, the BB French School Disposition Act of 2021, with Councilman Robert White, who chairs the Committee on Government Operations and Facilities. I will not rehash the information that was detailed already by Chairman White. I'll just add that the Committee on Business and Economic Development has oversight of the Deputy Mayor for Planning and Economic Development, where the dispositions occur. And as such, we've chosen to do this hearing jointly since we have both oversight of surpluses and dispositions together. And so, as the councilman mentioned, we previously had a hearing on this bill, but out of abundance of caution, we want to make sure that we do it again today. And I look forward to hearing from the witnesses who have signed up to testify. And I know that this bill enjoys broad support from the community as well as from the Ward 6 Councilmember Charles Allen. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson McDuffie. Before we start the hearing from our witnesses, I want to just lay out the ground rules. I think we only have one witness still. Everyone should have received a copy of the witness list yesterday. I'll call the witness or witnesses from the list. When I do, the staff will promote you to a panelist so that you can testify. When you're promoted, you will drop out of the hearing momentarily and come back into the hearing as a panelist. At that time, the witnesses will be able to unmute. Our public witnesses will be provided 4 minutes to testify. And I will now call up our public witnesses. Amy Moore, the Executive Director of the Capitol Hill Arts Workshop. And we have one additional witness, Christy Onyechi.
Good afternoon. My name is Amy Moore, and I'm the Executive Director of the Capitol Hill Arts Workshop. Thank you to Chairpersons McDuffie and White and to this committee for the opportunity to testify in support of the Capitol Hill Arts Workshop Lease Renewal Authorization Act of 2019. My comments today will focus on programming reach and impact. The mission of the Capitol Hill Arts Workshop is to build community through the arts. Since 1972, CHA has been a hub for the meaningful exchange of ideas through art making, both inside and outside of its walls. We focus on creative expression and the power of partnerships to uplift the arts, connect diverse groups of people, employ local artists, facilitate community networks, and encourage civil discourse through all forms of art. Our mission is rooted in the idea that art and community building are synergistic. Since 1979, CHA has been fortunate to operate from the former BB French School at 545 7th Street Southeast. Our current lease with the district expired in March 2021, and we're seeking to negotiate a new long-term lease of at least 20 years with the city. This would enable us to program more strategically for the future, increase our fundraising capacity, and invest in longer-term maintenance solutions for an aging and historic building. DC's cultural plan recommends a shared stewardship of culture, organizational innovation, and leverage funding to sustain the city's culture core, and to create new opportunities for historically underrepresented creators and communities. Through its diverse programming, CHA is an integral part of that plan. Arts education is at the heart of our programming. Our mission's success hinges on our ability to maintain a diverse constituency. For us, inclusivity is synonymous with community. The arts are unique in their ability to connect groups of people who take risks in sharing their perspectives, stories, and experiences. That space of openness makes way for common ground and engenders empathy, which in turn brings communities closer together. We cast an intentionally wide net that includes classes for youth and adults of all disciplines in visual and performing arts, private music lessons, artist residencies and commissions, public art projects, and community outreach that directly serve about 1,700 people annually. CHA also operates a black box theater. We're one of the few affordable performance spaces in the city that supports small theater companies and individual artists creating and presenting innovative new work. Approximately 75% of our community partner organizations are Black-led. And each year, these organizations collectively draw about 3,200 audience members. CHA rents very affordable studio and rehearsal space to dozens of local arts groups and artists and serves as a home for half a dozen other established theater and choral programs. These groups collectively serve another 500 people. As demographics change throughout the city, we must constantly adjust to preserve the integrity of our operating philosophy. A long-term lease would enable us to better identify and plan for meeting the long-term needs of our community and ensuring our programming remains inclusive and relevant. Our broad approach provides unlimited access to the arts for people in all socioeconomic brackets. At CHA, senators' kids and kids who are experiencing homelessness make art together without concern for status or stature. In our history, we have never turned anyone away for inability to pay. We routinely invest in long-term program partnerships and serve as a ready community resource with bespoke activities and workshops for countless organizations throughout the city. Through the pandemic, CHA has not only provided uninterrupted educational services for youth and adult students, but served as a hub for mutual aid in our community. Finally, CHA commissions and creates art in public spaces and hosts exhibitions which contribute to the lively DC art scene and overall livability of the community. The breadth and depth of CHA's programming and partnership building over nearly 5 decades are unique in this city. A long-term lease would enable us to confidently build on and lean into that impactful legacy as a pillar of our community as we set our sights on the next 50 years. Thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. And Ms. Onyechi, and please correct me and forgive me if I mispronounced your name.
Well, you said my name perfectly. That's awesome. But please forgive me. I actually was trying to testify for the 3 p.m. meeting. So I actually kind of got them switched, like accidentally. Please don't be upset. But I also wanted to know if I wanted my councilman to be there as well, Kenyon McDuffie, because I live in his ward. So I'm sorry that I got them mixed up and switched.
Not a problem at all. This
Okay.
hearing is a joint hearing between mine and Councilmember McDuffie's
Okay.
committee. The 3 o'clock hearing is just with my committee. It's 2
Okay.
nominees for the Commission on Human Rights. So
Okay.
Councilmember McDuffie isn't on that committee.
Okay, because my situation that I wanted to testify at 3 p.m., the Committee of Human Rights involves housing. And I wanted to make sure I testified because there's something that's been taking place that I have not been I've kind of been stifled from informing the council. And it's a pretty big situation that I obviously won't go into now because this is not the committee. But I definitely think that the councilman should know what's taking place in his ward, what has been. So even if he's not on it, he should be viewing it.
So, Ms. Onyechi, what we can do is actually have somebody from my staff just put the information in the chat so we can connect with you now.
What I actually did, Councilman Duffy, that's why I didn't want to say too much now, is that I have reached out to your staff numerous times.
Ms. Onyechi,
I have receipts from your staff on meetings I have scheduled with you, 3 receipts, none of them.
Question?
Yes.
You want to hash this out right here? Maybe it'd be more appropriate not to get into the details in the hearing that isn't
right. That's what I'm saying. That's why I said I don't want to really go into.
I appreciate that. Right.
That.
What we can do is immediately after this, we can connect. If you want to do it that way, I can have somebody on my staff.
Okay. Okay. So do I put an email or not? Well, a number in the chat.
We already have your information. So
okay.
Okay. Okay.
Perfect.
Okay.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Ms. Onyechi.
I apologize, Councilman White, for mixing up the time.
Could I just, Chairman White, I would just say, just this appearance, I know you mixed it up, but it doesn't negate probably your need, if you would like, to still come at the other hearing and make sure that you put your testimony on the record, because that's the hearing where it's going to be reflected on your testimony on the Office of Human Rights. So.
Okay. What I'm concerned about is that I can't receive phone calls while I'm inside my apartment, which is part of my human rights testimony. That was cut off by DC police.
Got it.
So I'm concerned that if you try to reach out to me, I won't receive the call or the email.
How about we work that out and try to make sure that you have the ability to testify if you so desire at 3 o'clock.
Oh, I will.
Nonetheless, we'll make sure that your testimony is a part of the record. And this obviously is a record too. It's just of a different hearing, but it'll
exactly right.
Be included. Okay.
Right. Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
No problem.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Wonderful. So let me now, before I start questions, let me turn to my colleague, Councilmember Allen, who's been obviously very involved in this issue and introduced legislation last council period to move this issue forward. Councilmember Allen.
Well, thank you so much. I just going to make a quick brief statement for the record around this legislation. But first, let me also just extend my thanks to Councilor Robert White, Councilor Kenyon McDuffie for holding this hearing. Really appreciate that because it's an important step moving forward. As I think has been covered already, since its opening nearly 50 years ago, as I think I heard Amy talking about, CHAW has served thousands of young people, adult students, artists, and patrons every year. Their mission, it helps discover individual potential while learning and teaching and supporting the notion that the arts creates a common ground and must be accessible to all. And I think it's just plain evidenced by their many decades of work and what we see CHAW do day in and day out. Of course, in this past year, since the pandemic has impacted the ability to gather in person, CHAW very quickly converted their model. They could continue to serve the community. They changed their educational programs to online formats. They ensured their physical space could continue to support the community. CHAW opened up their building to the Ward 6 Mutual Aid Network, volunteer collective supporting DC's Black and Brown communities hardest hit by COVID-19. I went and volunteered one day in there and just saw how the space was being utilized and volunteers were safely and effectively helping serve the community, which is just a hallmark of what CHAW has been for so long. The building has functioned now this last year as a food collection hub, serving thousands of neighbors per week. What we know, though, is that the CHAW has been in this building for a very long time. But the nature of the constant short-term leases and the lack of long-term stability for the building has meant that CHAW has been unable to secure a long-term lease to be able to think about how do they do capital fundraising, how do they do capital investments, how do they see their future for a long time in this space that everyone in the community supports, the ANC supports, every community organization. I can't find a single person who's not such a big fan of CHAW. So we've been working on this for years. I want to thank Nicole Hopkins on my staff, who's worked really hard on this. I thank Amy, her board, her predecessors, everybody who's been trying to work towards this. And it feels like we're at this moment now. And so I'm really glad that we are. I'm really grateful that we're holding this hearing to be able to make sure we get this step done. But we want CHAW to be here for the next 50 years. But it's got to have a long-term lease to be able to secure that future. And that's going to be something that's really important so that they can have the capital improvements, the fundraising, their long-term strategic planning and goals. So I want to thank the mayor for working with us over these last couple of years and getting us to here. And again, thank you, Councilmembers McDuffie and Robert White, for bringing this forward for a hearing. And I look forward to the day that we can actually cast a vote and be able to move this forward and secure the long-term future for CHAW in our community, because it is such a special place and special part of our community. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Allen. Ms. Moore, I don't have a ton of questions for you because we went over the issue in a good bit of detail in the last council period, but I do want to confirm. So this is this will be a 20-year lease, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and that meets your needs. I know that our discussion in previous years, there was some concern about the needing to have the lease term long enough to be able to make capital improvements. So 20 years works for CHAW.
Yes.
Perfect. And I heard you in your testimony talk a lot about diversity. What about costs for programs? Do any of the programs that you have carry costs for residents?
Have funding from DC Commission on the Arts and Humanities, which covers some of our costs. Also other foundations and sponsorships, as well as individual contributions. So about half of our income is from registration, earned from registrations and rentals and that kind of thing. And the other half is from donations and grants.
Okay, so so other than rentals and grants, is there for any of the programs a cost to individual residents for participation?
Well, we never turn anyone away for inability to pay. We have a very robust tuition assistance program that comes in the form of just complete registration waivers or highly subsidized and reduced rents for organizations. So there are some people who pay full freight and some people who pay nothing.
And that was my recollection from the last hearing. Those are all the questions I have. I do have a number of questions for our government witness for DGS, but let me turn to my co-chair, Councilmember McDuffie.
I appreciate your testimony. I do not have any questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And Councilmember Allen, did you have questions?
I mean, if it were up to me, I'd love this to be a 99-year lease. I think for me, what's most important, since I can't make that decision unilaterally, is just to make sure that a 20-year lease is long enough to give CHAW, its board, its decision makers, the stability it needs. My expectation would be if we end up with a 20-year, at the end of those 20 years, we're renewing for another 20. I think we've got to keep this long-term stability, but just, I guess, to make sure, Ms. Moore, you feel confident that 20 years is going to give you the ability to have it long enough. I know you smiled when I said a 99-year lease, but just want to confirm that 20 still works.
I think it does. Going into this process, my understanding was that the 20-year lease was our option if we were going to go through this particular process. So we can certainly do a lot in 20 years.
Excellent. Well, I know you will. And again, I think that this is just so that it's clear for the record for folks who may not be familiar with CHA, like this is just an organization that has deep community partnerships that just abound. But having this just creates a different type of relationship when it comes to long-term strategic planning, long-term capital investments. And that's really what this is about, is securing the future of CHA, a just incredibly strong and important and resilient organization. It's hard to find a family in Ward 6 that hasn't, had a kid go to camp there, who's volunteered, who's taken a class, who's been a part of CHA. It is just woven into the fabric of the life of families and residents across Capitol Hill and throughout Ward 6. So I don't really have any questions other than just my full-throated support. And if there was a mechanism to create a longer lease, I would do it in a heartbeat. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Allen. Ms. Moore, thank you very much, and thank you to for everything that you and your team are doing over at CHA. You all really do run some excellent programs, and it's an incredible organization, as Councilmember Allen stated. So thank you again for being with us today and for your work on this.
Thank you very much.
Having completed our list of public witnesses who signed up to testify, I now want to recognize our government witness, DGS, Department of General Services, Associate Director Tawanna Hicks. And I will give her a moment to get onto the screen. Ms. Hicks, welcome. Good to have you. It is the practice of this committee to put our government witnesses under oath, so I would ask that you raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you are about to provide to the Committee on Government Operations and Facilities and the Committee on Business and Economic Development is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And
Councilmember, I'll say I do as well, just in case I have to jump in.
I appreciate it. You've been here before, I see. Thank you. You can begin your testimony when you're ready.
Good afternoon, Chairman White, Chairman McDuffie, Councilmember Allen, and staff of the Committee on Business and Economic Development and Committee on Government Operations and Facilities. I am Tawanna Hicks, Interim Associate Director for the Department of General Services Portfolio Management Division. I'm here today to present testimony regarding Bill 24-0155, the BB French School Disposition Act of 2021. This legislation authorizes the Department of General Services to enter into a lease agreement with the Capitol Hill Arts Workshop located at 545 7th Street Southeast, commonly known as the BB French School building. The property is comprised of a building containing approximately 9,457 square feet with a land area of 3,163 square feet. The property was last used as a public school in 1942 and has been occupied by CHA since 1979. Currently, CHA is operating under a lease with the district that began in April 2004. DGS, on behalf of the district, has executed 4 amendments to extend this lease. The term of the most recent lease expired on March 31st, 2021, and the lease is now in a holdover status. The terms of the lease state holdover tenancy is on a month-to-month basis. CHA has expressed a desire to remain at the property and has requested a new lease with a 20-year term. CHA has previously testified before both committees that with the assurance of a longer-term lease, the organization could undertake a new capital improvement project every 1 to 2 years to enhance the space and expand programming capacity. Some of those capital improvements include HVAC system replacement, repairing and replacing windows for energy efficiency, refinishing floors, and assessing the needs of the historic building's exterior. The executive believes that these planned improvements and CHA's continued arts programming are a productive use of the property and will continue to benefit district residents. Based on CHAW's history of responsible stewardship and the organization's desire to continue to make capital improvements to the property, DGS has negotiated a letter of intent to enter into a 20-year lease for CHAW to remain at the property, pending council approval. The executive supports CHAW's desire to enter into a long-term lease to remain at the property, and the mayor has submitted the measure before us today to move the long-term lease forward. DGS looks forward to working with the committees to move this measure through the legislative process. Thank you for the opportunity to discuss this measure, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have at this time.
Thank you very much. So I do understand that there have been several extensions since the last long-term lease reached its original termination date. When does the current extension term expire?
It expired March 31st of 2021.
Okay, so there's currently no active extension.
Correct.
Okay. And in brief, what has happened between the time of our last hearing on this topic in October of 2019 and now? And what was the cause for the delay in getting the legislation before the council?
So as we understand, the council introduced legislation in 2019. DGS had yet to negotiate a letter of intent at that time. It took us a few months to get that done and executed. And we since then have put together this legislative package and introduced it to council. And now that the package is complete, we are looking forward to working with council to move this long-term lease forward. And during that time, I'll also note that, we have continued to ensure that CHAW remained in the building and their operations were uninterrupted.
Appreciate that. So with a 20-year lease, obviously, often folks prefer to have a longer term lease than that, but 20 years is a long time. I mean, if we think back the past 20 years, a lot of things we wouldn't have predicted. So while I think CHAW will be going strong for many, many years, if CHAW ran into challenges during the term of this lease, what would happen to the property?
Well, we have default provisions. If CHAW for some reason is unable to continue to operate as they have been legally allowed to per the terms of the lease, then we would provide them with an opportunity to cure any potential default. That would include written notice and a time period to cure. And if they did not cure, then the district would have the right to terminate the lease and the property would revert back to the district.
Okay. And can CHAW transfer its rights to another entity under this lease?
Currently, there isn't an existing lease, but when we negotiate and enter into the new lease agreement, typically those rights are negotiated. So because we haven't specified exactly what that would look like, I can't say at the moment.
I don't follow. I'm sorry. So the 20-year lease does not include any provisions about limiting their ability to transfer it?
No, typically it would. We haven't finalized the lease agreement. All that we have finalized currently is the letter of intent.
Okay.
And so, I believe the letter of intent does speak to limitations with respect to their assignment rights.
Okay, yeah, I'm looking at that section now, which I had missed before. Thank you. And how large is the BB French School property, and what is the assessed value?
The building is approximately 9,400 square feet, a little bit larger. The assessed value per an appraisal that was done last year, there's a fair market value of $138,000 annually, and the appraised value of the property is approximately $2.475 million.
Okay. And has DGS or any other government agency, I can't imagine why another government agency would, but has the district evaluated the condition of the property recently?
We have not. All responsibilities in terms of maintenance and improvements reside currently with CHA.
Okay. And the facility has been obviously extensively renovated to accommodate various artistic work and exhibition spaces over the years. And Shaw anticipates making further improvements to the property using finances obviously obtained from a long-term lease. Do those improvements have to be approved by the district?
We do, yes. We would put a provision in the lease whereby they would need written consent from the district for any improvements. And that would involve a review of specifications and plans and then them receiving approval from the district to move forward.
Okay. Let me turn to my colleague, Councilmember Allen. Did you have questions?
Just a couple, I appreciate it. I think on the, first off, Ms. Hicks and Mr. Scow, thank you for working on this with Shaw. I know it has taken years to get us here, so I just want to make sure I acknowledge that and thank you for the work to get here. I guess first question, kind of along the lines of what I had been asking with Ms. Moore, for example, is why do we settle on 20 versus 50-year lease or a longer term? 20 years is certainly much better than 5, so we appreciate that. I think it allows them to make some long-term plans. But for the sake of argument, why not a 30? Why not a 50-year lease?
I believe that was what was originally agreed to between the district and CHA. Certainly we are open to extending that if there's a need to. So, that's not set in stone.
Okay. So I guess what I'm trying to get, there's, to our knowledge, it's not like there was a legal reason that 20 versus 30. That was just part of what the parties had agreed to at the time.
I believe so. As I think back, I believe at the time we started the negotiation process, the 10801 legislation, I think there was a 20-year cap to enter into a lease agreement that would not require us to go through the disposition process. And so I think that's where that number originated from. Since then, the legislation has been amended and changed, and the threshold now is 15 years. But again, as I stated before, we are certainly open if we need to extend beyond the currently negotiated 20-year lease.
Okay, thank you. And I think the question earlier too around assigning rights, and I realize you got to kind of finalize everything, but just for the public's perspective, we would always look to protect obviously our district interest from the standpoint of this is not something CHA would be looking to do, but let's say that we entered into a lease and then someone says, I'm gonna take this building and turn it into a condo. Like we write the protections into our lease agreement such that those types of rights can't be assigned. But if CHA were to say, well, we actually partner with other community organizations and they're gonna have, they'd like to have an office in, within our space, those are the types of things that can be negotiated, in good faith as you put that deal together. That's kind of the way I'm hearing that a little bit. I just want to make sure.
Yeah, that's correct. That's correct. We don't want to stray from the permitted use as we've negotiated. But certainly if they're seeking transfers or assignments kind of with entities that are within their control to some degree, then with our review and approval, that could work.
Right. And then from a protecting district assets perspective, this isn't going to happen, but if CHA were to all of a sudden fall apart completely, you within the lease build in the protections such that the district essentially claws back the property. That isn't going to happen. But in terms of just making sure you're protecting and looking after the district's assets, that's part of what gets built into the lease.
That is correct. That is correct.
Well, the last thing I'd say is just, if all parties are comfortable with 20 years, then I'm comfortable with 20 years. Like I said, I understand the constraints of, how do you make sure it's long-term? If I'm going to invest in HVAC system, I have walked on those floors in Shaw. I know that they need a pretty significant refinishing probably. You know, there are going to be significant capital costs that will come with that building because it's beautiful, but it's old. And so it needs some love. And so I know that as they make those big capital investments, sometimes financing and other reasons may look at, you know, do we want 30 rather than 20? Kind of thinking of it from a home ownership model of how loans and financing get set up. So if that's a direction that the parties end up going in, I certainly would support that. But I also know if the deal is 20 and we just get it done and that provides the stability and the long-term piece that everyone wants, good with that too. I just know that there'll be some long-term capital investments that they may need to think about. But otherwise, I think this is a great step to help protect the future of CHA and make sure that our district asset is being protected, but that it's serving the community, serving the residents in a really great way. So thank you all very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilmember Allen. A few more questions. Ms. Hicks, what terms of the lease have changed between the lease that you're negotiating now and the old long-term lease? Are there any material changes?
The one material change would be the lease term, extending it for 20 years.
Okay. And has, well, obviously this CHA is a wonderful organization, but this is still a district asset. Has CHA made any commitments to ensure that it, or is CHA required to have programming that benefits the entire community, or is that at their discretion?
I believe it is somewhat up to their discretion, but it's built in a broad way in terms of the permitted use and their function as a community arts workshop. So we do not get into regulating them with respect to those day-to-day functions and operations, but certainly we respect that that is their mission and they have committed to do so.
Okay. So if an organization wanted to negotiate a long-term lease on a district property for a business venture, is that something that would be permitted, that they might be able to negotiate?
I'm gonna need you to clarify. Are you speaking with respect to this property or just?
And generally, so, you know, if we have a district asset and we're going to execute a long-term lease, I take your previous answer to say that there's no requirement that someone leasing a government property has to sort of engage in community-focused activity.
I would say that every transaction is unique and the terms of that particular agreement will just differ depending on the circumstance. So I wouldn't give a blanket answer to say, no, that's out of the question. It would be specific to the parties or the party that we're dealing with and the type of business they're trying to operate.
Okay. To your knowledge, is the ANC still supportive of this program of the lease extension?
Yes, as I understand it, we received a letter of support yesterday after they had a meeting. So
okay.
We received one in 2019 and now we have one for 2021.
Okay. And have you heard any concerns from community members about CHA or the continued lease of this building?
We have not. We have not.
And are there any remaining points of, I guess, material points of disagreement between CHA and the executive?
None that I'm aware of.
If the council approves the legislation, about how long will it take, do you think, to execute the lease?
I would give us probably 2 to 3 months to be on the safe side.
Okay. Why would it take that long?
Well, we are approaching holidays, you know, as you know, schools are out of sessions shortly. And so it's just a matter of scheduling and other matters that we have, lease transactions that are in the queue. But we will certainly give this priority, understanding that this is important to both the executive and council.
Okay. And finally, how did you decide to waive the normal procedural rules for surplus and disposition under DC Code Section 10-801, which, as you know, is the normal process for surplus and disposition that requires public hearings and more analysis? How did you decide to waive that for this project?
We considered the long-term relationship that, CHA has been in the building since 1979. We've had several lease agreements with them. We have valued their contributions to the community and understand that this is supported by the ANC, it's supported by the council member, and we just wanted to make sure and ensure that they could remain in place and continue to provide the benefits to our district residents.
Those are all the questions I have. Is there anything else that you think is important to bring to the committee's attention on this?
Not at this time, no. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Perfect. Well, I want to thank you and Mr. Scull for being with us today. For anyone who was unable to testify, written testimony is encouraged and will be made part of the official record. Anyone who's interested may submit additional testimony by email to the committees at facilities@dccouncil.us. The record for this hearing will close at the close of business on Monday, May 31st, 2021. So again, thanks to our public witnesses and our government witnesses for being here with us today. The business before these committees is concluded. The time is now 12:49 p.m. and this hearing is adjourned. Have a great day.
Thank you, Councilmember.
Thank you.